Sahel under siege, the truth the world needs to hear. The Sahel, a massive belt of semi-arid land stretching across the continent from Senegal to Sudan, is now one of the most dangerous places on earth. And it's not just because of the battles, it's because the conflict here is mutating into something bigger, more complex, and more deeply rooted. The year is 2025. In just 4 months, the Sahel has seen over 400 attacks. Nearly 2,900 people killed. Villages erased from the map. Entire regions slipping from government control into the hands of militants. And beneath the statistics? The faces of the most vulnerable women and girls bearing the brunt of the fallout. But this is not just a story of despair. It's also a story of a people clinging to identity, heritage, and hope even as bullets fly and drones buzz overhead. The terror surge, women and girls in the crossfire. From April to July 2025, the United Nations reports a staggering escalation in violence. The perpetrators are two of the most lethal militant forces in Africa. JNIM, Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, an al-Qaeda affiliate. Is Sahel an Islamic State branch? These are not ragtag bands hiding in the bush. These are disciplined, networked, and increasingly well-armed organizations. They deploy drones not just for reconnaissance but for targeted strikes. They tap into organized crime, gold smuggling from Mali, cattle theft in Niger, and drug trafficking routes across West Africa to keep their war chests full. In villages from Mopti in Mali to Dori in Burkina Faso, the humanitarian cost is crushing. Women and girls, in particular, face 3 interlocking crises. Disrupted education, schools shut down out of fear. Militants destroy classrooms, threaten teachers, and impose their own curriculum. Thousands of girls are withdrawn entirely, many forced into early marriages. Gender-based violence, abduction, assault, and rape are used deliberately to terrorize communities. Survivors face stigma and isolation on top of trauma. Economic devastation in a region where women play a key role in agriculture and markets. Displacement destroys livelihoods. Widows and single mothers are left with no income, trapped in displacement camps dependent on aid that often arrives too late. UN field reports describe villages where women have organized watch groups, taking turns staying awake at night to warn of approaching fighters. But without outside support, these acts of resilience are fragile. JNIM's dangerous rise, from militants to governors. Here's where the Sahel's crisis becomes even more alarming. This isn't just about armed raids. JNIM is transforming into a parallel state. In rural Mali and Burkina Faso, they have courts applying their own strict interpretation of Sharia law. Schools where math and reading are taught alongside extremist indoctrination. Tax systems villagers pay in grain, livestock, or cash in exchange for protection. In some areas, locals say JNIM solves disputes faster than the government. That is the ultimate danger when an armed group is seen as a more reliable authority than the state. Their estimated 6,000 fighters are not content to remain in the Sahel's core. They're probing into coastal West Africa, Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, Togo, leveraging local grievances, land disputes, ethnic tensions, or frustration with government neglect. Once they root themselves in a community, they don't just bring guns, they bring governance. And that makes them far harder to dislodge. The violence spreads, Togo under fire. Until recently, Togo was viewed as a stable coastal nation. That stability is cracking. In 2025 alone, JNIM carried out 15 attacks in northern Togo, killing 54 civilians and 8 soldiers. The attacks are concentrated in the Savannahs region, a dusty, underdeveloped stretch of land bordering Burkina Faso. For decades, the Sahel's crisis was framed as a problem for Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. But extremists are now showing they can leapfrog borders. If they secure routes to the coast, they gain access to international ports for smuggling, new recruitment pools in marginalized coastal communities, Strategic depth, the ability to retreat and regroup outside traditional Sahel battlefields. Regional security analysts warn, once militants entrench in northern Togo, pushing them out will require years, maybe decades of sustained effort. A glimmer of hope, Timbuktu's manuscripts return home. Amid all the destruction, one story stands out like a torch in the dark. Timbuktu, Mali, a city synonymous with learning and trade during the 15th and 16th centuries, holds thousands of handwritten manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, law, and poetry. In 2012, jihadists occupied Timbuktu. Locals, knowing what could be lost, smuggled these manuscripts out, hiding them in rice sacks, under floorboards, in donkey carts, moving them 700 kilometers to Bamako. For over a decade, they stayed there, safe but far from home. Now, in 2025, over 200 crates weighing 5.5 tons have been flown back to Timbuktu. The government, alongside international partners, is digitizing them and strengthening storage conditions. It's a symbolic victory in a region often defined by destruction. Here is an act of restoration, proof that the Sahel's identity cannot be erased by war. The bigger picture, why this matters beyond the Sahel. Let's zoom out. Why should the world care? 1. Security spillover. If extremists gain coastal access, they can expand smuggling of weapons, narcotics, and humans. These routes won't just affect Africa, they'll reach Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. 2. Migration pressure. Conflict and climate change are pushing people south toward coastal cities and north toward Europe. Every attack fuels displacement. Without solutions, migration crises will intensify. 3. Economic collapse. The Sahel holds gold, uranium, and key agricultural zones. If instability continues, industries collapse, and entire economies falter. 4. Geopolitical tug-of-war. Russia's Wagner-linked operations, Chinese infrastructure deals, US and EU counter-terror programs, all are vying for influence. The Sahel could become a proxy battleground for global powers. What's happening? Humanitarian crisis, terror attacks surge, women and girls face heightened risk of violence and abuse. Extremist expansion, JNIM increasingly controls territory and spreads southward into new regions. Regional spread of violence, militants now active in northern Togo, crossing beyond the Sahel core. Cultural milestone, Timbuktu's manuscripts return home after 13 years, a powerful act of cultural preservation. Between despair and defiance, the Sahel is at a breaking point. One road leads to escalating violence, extremist governance, and humanitarian collapse. The other to a fragile but possible recovery, built on resilience, culture, and coordinated action. In the camps of Ouagadougou, you'll find women forming cooperatives to earn an income despite losing their homes. In Gao, teachers run secret night classes so children can keep learning without drawing militants' attention. In Timbuktu, archivists work by candlelight to digitize manuscripts that carry the wisdom of centuries. These acts of defiance matter. They are proof that even in the shadow of war, people will fight not just for survival, but for dignity. The question is whether the world will stand with them, or whether the Sahel will be left to fend for itself against an enemy that grows stronger every day. Because make no mistake, if the Sahel falls deeper into chaos, the shockwaves will be felt far beyond Africa. Please like and subscribe.